Good morning, everyone. And last day of the conference, you all had a good time? Yeah? So, it's kind of like it's an honor and kind of also like a little bit of like starting the last day, being like the first of the last sessions. And this is the first time that I spoke at been speaking at PSConf. It's the first time I've been at PSConf even. So for me, it's been an awesome conference, even though I had to work while doing it, so I kind of missed a lot. But I hope you all had a great time. I certainly had. That's me. My name is Robert. I am the head of platform engineering at Crayon, which is a relatively new group. So that means that I am platform engineering at the moment. So I am my own boss, literally and figuratively. But we're hiring. So please apply. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Azure, hopefully also when come next month, because that's when all the new MVP stuff happens. So hopefully I get renewed. And I'm a 2-time HashiCorp ambassador. I'm also in the CNCF, and I do a lot of things in open source and just in general, a lot of fun, cool things. Actually, I work way too much, so stop asking me to do stuff. I need a break. Anyway, the agenda for today is GitHub Actions. I'm going to talk a little bit about how GitHub Action works, but obviously it's the idea is to look at how you can use PowerShell in GitHub Actions. I've been using GitHub Actions since GitHub Actions became GitHub Actions. I still don't know why they call it that. It sounds kind of weird, but the idea is that you have these actions that you can run. Yeah, I guess, for a non-English speaking person, that kind of just sounds weird. I could call like GitHub magic pipelines or something. There's also this idea of that you can create your own. Well, you can create workflows. You can create your workflows that you reference, and you can create actions that specifically can run in different workflows. A lot of work there. We'll get into that. But the really short version of GitHub Action is its YAML. Is highly customizable. It's actually really flexible. It's a really good system. And there's the easy-to-use marketplace where you can find all these different actions that you can use. So even if you don't want to create stuff yourself, you can easily find stuff. And it has actually a very generous free tier, which makes sense because GitHub is kind of where open source lives. So if they didn't have that would be kind of bad. So GitHub Action uses something called workflows, and this is kind of like the workflow of a workflow. It's based on event triggers on the repository where you have your GitHub Action. And the event can be basically anything. It can be pushing a new code. It can be a pull request. It can be a new issue. It can be a lot of things. And based on what you have written that your workflow is supposed to be triggered on, your workflow runs, and there's jobs and steps, and they can have conditionals, etc., etc. So we're going to look at some of that. These are linked in case you go into the slide and click on them. But if you click on them, you get to the page where it summarizes what all these machines have pre-installed, which is a lot. So basically, anything you want to do is you're probably capable of doing that with the hosted runners, which is just VMs that are spun up in Azure. And obviously you can self-host if you want to do that, but then you have to take care of stuff, which we don't want to do. And it's even have Mac OS, which is really cool if you're doing totally cross-platform stuff. So if your repository is public, it's free, so use as much as you want. If you're a free user, there's 2,000 minutes that you can use. So if you have in a private repository, and if you are a pro subscription user, you have 3,000, and then there's some enterprise minutes as well. The only thing to think about here is literally the multiplier. So if it's a Linux machine, it's one minute is 1 minute. If it's a Windows machine, 1 minute is 2 minutes. Because why not? And if it's Mac OS, 1 minute is 10 minutes. And I'm guessing that's because, like, how many Macs can they have? And I don't know. I don't know how that works. Don't ask me about that. So this is an attempt of showing off like how this works. Inside of your repository, you have to create a .github folder. That's where your GitHub configuration stuff lands. You can do a lot with that folder, but in this case, we have a folder called workflows where our workflows live. I'm going to say workflow a lot. And then you have a file name, and it's a YAML file. So that .yaml or .mm, which I use because it's 1/4 more efficient to write, you know. And then it's like you name it and you define what it should be triggered on. In this case, it's a push. This is literally stolen from GitHub's documentation. So jobs, you name your job, what it runs on, and then I see I forgot to add the steps shouldn't be there. Ignore that. We'll look at stuff that actually works afterwards. And then all the dashed lines are steps. And it can be complex or not. So you can see the first one is it's literally just defining, it uses the action for checking out the code. That's all it does. You don't have to do anything more than that it does just that. And then you can obviously name and have more complex stuff. But because, why not? Anything that I said now that was unclear? Just like a good, no questions so far. Is this big enough? Good? All right, cool. So this is my PSConf repository. I used it yesterday, a little bit at least. And if you want to look at this code, feel free to go in here. Yesterday it was literally just like 3 lines of code that was used, so not really that interesting, but this one has more. So as you can see here, it's just like a standard repository, and we have our GitHub and workflows because there's nothing else in the GitHub folder here. And like I said, I didn't lie, it's just YAML files. I tried giving them a little bit of indexing just because I want to go through this one by one. And I realized literally this morning when I woke up at 6 to actually get this talk done, that the first one is called basic, but it's not really basic. So sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I'm just complex. So the basic workflow, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show like just using PowerShell. And there's 2 ways of using PowerShell, obviously, because there's the PowerShell and then there's the PowerShell. So it's PowerShell 7 and Windows PowerShell. One thing that I noticed, by the way, if you want to do this, if you want to do like repetitive steps on a lot of different OSs, you can use this strategy matrix and then create a list of OSs. This is still good text size? Yeah, okay, cool. And as you can see here, I just have Ubuntu, Windows, and Mac OS latest because it's cross-platform, which is good. And then on these jobs, it says runs on and is referencing the matrix OS value. So that's how it works. And then it just runs PS version table and finding out what version it is. Problem is, if you're going to do this on Windows, I could, in my, weird mind, I thought that I could add a step in this job and say, oh, by the way, if it's Windows, also run the Windows one. That fails. I think it does like checks on all the steps in a job, and if that doesn't work with one of the OSs, it just stops. I might be wrong. So I had to add another job just to do that. And I haven't done this type of like cross OS things in production for a while, and I had to do that last time as well, so I'm fairly sure that's correct. And then I just wanted to show how you can, so as you can see here, this is just run, and this case is basically just getting the PS version table variable, but I also wanted to show just how you can do inline scripting with a,
Line 16, does it matter what you put there? Is it like a named Then,
It needs to be a. It can have spaces and stuff like that. If you don't use the name here, this is the name in the step lists.
or like inline script, you have to put that in there. That's the right.
No, this one could have been called whatever. So this is just me trying to, write something. This is the job name, or let's call it the job index name, just to call it something. And then you have the display name. And then there's the steps. And again, it's dash name, it could be dash shell, and then name underneath. Like that part doesn't matter, but in this case, it's name, which will show, and then the shell and the run. If I just had like a run or something, it would just say that in there. Yeah. So this is just to make it more better for you to use when you're actually using the actions more than anything else. So if you look at this, 1 hour ago it worked, but so hopefully it works still. As you can see here, I have on workflow dispatch, which is a little special event that makes it so that I can actually run this whenever I want to. It could have been on Git commit, like committing the code or pushing the code or PRs and anything like that. But just so I can actually show this off, I have a button that says run workflow, and hopefully it pops up. Hopefully I still have internet and everything like that. Just hedging my bets. As you can see here, there's a lot of stuff happening because we have this matrix bar that does all the jobs, and then we have a couple ones that are running separate jobs. And right now, this is just a mismatch of jobs and stuff like that. I could have dependencies on different jobs. I can do testing, and then I can have some output from that job, and then use that as an input in a different job, et cetera, et cetera. So it can get pretty complex really quickly if you wanted to. But if you go into the Ubuntu one, it should say 7.4, cool. The Windows one on PowerShell says 7.2.4, cool. Seems like everyone's up to date, 7.2.4. And then obviously the Windows one, which will show 5.1 because it's the Windows one. And then we have the script, which says, do you know what time it is? What a silly thing to ask. It's obviously 7:06, which is not. Because it's the UTC time, I don't know. I thought about fixing that, but I thought, why do that? Then I have something interesting to say for a couple of seconds. So that's more or less, how you use it. You just need to run basically a shell job and then define that the shell is supposed to be PowerShell. So it's not really that hard to do. But obviously you want to also be able to run scripts. So again, just to make sure that it's more interesting than, just running a script saying hello. I have defined some inputs, and then I will run a script and then use these inputs as parameter entries. And again, running on Ubuntu, so I get that one multiplier and maximize all the time that I could get on my free. Actually, this is private, so I'm actually burning my own credits, which is fine. I hope. And as you can see here, I went with the two different, just to show off what you can do. You can have a drop-down list like what up, and you can put in PSConf. And that's how I found out that. There. I found out that I didn't have it in quotes in the script. I found that out when I tried to say "What up, internet people of the interwebs," and then it crashed. So, all right. And in this case, obviously, I want to do something with a script, so I need to check out the code, or else the machine doesn't run the code or doesn't have the code. So I run a checkout, which literally does that. And then it says, what up, PSConf? So, just checking time. So, now we can run scripts here, we can do all these types of things. And this is fine. You can do a lot of repeatable things this way. But what I also wanted to show off before going into how to create your own actions is you can reuse workflows. So in this scenario, we have, it needs to still be in the .github workflows folder, which makes it a little bit redundant to write all of this. Wish I could just write the name of the file then. And then, I have a YAML file, and it's a joke file. If you look at that one, it's referencing dad jokes. Like I said yesterday, I'm going to continue to use this API because I'm really bad at coming up with jokes myself. And in this case, instead of having like workflow dispatch, you need to have the workflow call, because this is called from a workflow and not a workflow that you're dispatching. I don't know. English is hard. So if I go into reusable workflow and run that, it will hopefully do exactly what I said it will do. So here we can see it actually does reference the name of the job inside of the dispatched or the other workflow. So it has the name of the job that we're doing, and then it's the name of the one that we called. And if you look at that, where did you learn to make ice cream? Sunday school. So it's a fairly okay one. So that's how you do, that's as much as you can do with what you have locally. Like you can just run like single workflows, you can use GitHub Actions from the marketplace, for instance. You can reuse workflows in this fashion. But where I think like GitHub Actions really come into play and kind of become like a thing that's very reusable, and we do this at Crayon. For instance, we have we create our own action to do automatically add new issues and pull requests to a certain project. So which will be redundant, I think, and not that long, because stuff are actually coming into GitHub Actions to do that. But for now, we have to do that like that. And that's just like a great thing, because we have a lot of, for instance, like Terraform modules, and all those Terraform modules all get issues, and all those issues are going into our SIG Terraform internally, special interest group, and so we have like one workboard for everything. And let's actually look at the workflow first. So you consume this in the same fashion as you would if it was someone else's action. In this case, and you can publish them, you can publish it to the marketplace yourself. You just have to like sign away your life or something. I don't know, I don't read it, so hopefully I haven't. This one is not published, but you can reference the organization or user, and then just the repo, and then the version that's been published, so you can have actually version control. What do you think this is? Is this dad jokes? What else do you joke about, like really corny? It was really popular for a while. Oh, this runs as well. Oh, the tension. Did you know Chuck Norris always wins at Battleship? No one has the guts to even fire a shot. So this this action file gets Chuck Norris facts or jokes. Well, we call them facts. And this is what it's called a composite action. So it's using composite, and you can do a lot here, but we can basically do whatever you already can do in a work, in a GitHub action. So in this case, we're doing just one step, which is fetching the facts, but obviously this can be really complex if you want to, which is, again, a great way to just, I keep on coming back to calling everything abstractions because everything is abstractions, like, welcome to IT. But like, if you have things that you want to do, for instance, on a project level or like an organization level, you have certain things that you always need to do. Instead of having big like workflows files that you put into every single repository, you could rather just make it into an action and then use that. And this one has no input or anything like that, but it works exactly the same way that you would expect. I can actually show that just for clarification, but it's not using I had to think what the name was. It's not using GitHub, no, PowerShell, sorry. But the idea is there. So, like for instance, this case, we need, like, what organization is this in? Because it could be in different organization, like project number, and we can require and everything like that, and then reuse that in the action. So, like if you have a certain script that has certain parameters that you want people to input, you could do it exactly like I did in the other action, but it also works, obviously, with composite actions. All right. Any questions?
What was the composite again? Sorry.
Yeah, so composite, like it's how you would do a action that can be used in a different workflow. Sorry, not pipeline. Yeah. So if we look at, like as you can see here, it uses this particular action or this particular repository, and the way that it works, it has an action.yaml file in there. It can have more things. It can have like logics around that it's using or something that it actually downloads or you know, a lot of people have stuff with JavaScript and so on and so forth in these actions. This is a very like rudimentary, easy example just to show off, and obviously we're talking about PowerShell, so that was the idea. Yeah, let's run another. Some of these Chuck Norris ones are a little bit weird. Dad jokes are so much easier. So just be stupid. Chuck Norris jokes can be yes, inspiring. Yes. Did you know? And I probably can't read it before. Chuck Norris can't get through his steak breakfast without a fifth of whiskey. Isn't that the opposite of Chuck Norris? Chuck Norris is supposed to be able to do anything. What? All right. So that is the really short version. Like, is there anything like practical questions?
Well, the only thing that I have now is maybe it spans beyond this, but we just started GitHub Enterprise, and I asked to work with the team to make like everything that we work together with GitHub. So how do you work a little bit in your team with actions? Is there like a way of working that you do the same way to make it easier?
So we are implementing GitHub Enterprise at Crayon at the moment, which means that they gave me the responsibility to answer every question everyone has about GitHub in general, it seems. And I get a lot of questions like, all right, how are we supposed to do things? Like, we are not going to create projects, all right. How are our projects supposed to look like? I'm like, that's up to you. You're going to look at it, not me. And that's kind of like the backside of like flexibility, is that there's usually no one right answer to it. And again, it kind of depends on what you're doing, what you're trying to do. If you have, for instance, certain things you need to build, like if you are creating let's call it build actions, could potentially just be reusing actions from the marketplace. And obviously there's, that's a good idea because there is a lot here. And probably when it comes to build and those kind of things, or just like code checks or all the things that you usually do in CI, and for that matter CD, you probably can find it here. It's only when you're starting to kind of have like these integrations that might not exist, or you have very specific maybe sets of GitHub actions from the marketplace that you want to run. Then you can create your own action to have that as like a one-stop implementation. And what you can do, again, just to reference something completely, you can create like internal templates.
Yes,
for
that
thing.
is something I wanted to do more. I saw something like that really helps your team, right?
Yeah.
To set it up quickly so the team works the same way.
Yeah. So in this case, like if we are creating a new Terraform module, you can just reference this, and you will get, for instance, things like the Pendabot and the release things that we are using, and obviously then the automation that we have for opening and closing issues and stuff like that. So instead of people having to kind of go copy code all the time when they start off, it's easier to just have this like internal template that you can use. And again, like I said, I could, in this case, have everything that happens in this project GitHub Action, a really bad name, have that in this file, and then that obviously will get pulled in. But that's just true for people trying to use Terraform modules. If they're going to build something new, or they can rather just have this, use this action instead to get it. And yeah, when it comes to just like starting with GitHub in itself, it's like I said, it's really easy, but it takes some time. And with everything else in IT, you just need to have experience running it, and then you see like what fits your organization more than anything else. No right answers. I'm a specialist at not giving answers. Speaking of which. Is there any more questions? Yes.
Very basic question. This is the first time I see options. You will run scripts on machines?
Yes.
And how is the connection between central machines and GitHub? How do you...
So the GitHub hosts their own runners. It is actually the same which is running on Azure DevOps, or the same images at least. And it's all running in Azure. So when you trigger a new workflow, you get provisioned a new virtual machine, depending on what you want, like if it's Ubuntu or Linux, if it's Windows, or if it's Mac. And obviously, that could mean that it's going to take a little bit of time to get, you might be in a queue, like who knows, there might be a lot of pressure like on that side. So the way that it works there is running a GitHub, I guess it's called GitHub Runner agent or something to that effect, which then connects and do all the magic. Which is why when you want to do something with your code, for instance, like in this case, you actually first have to run a checkout, because that's when it does like it pulls down your code from Git to that machine so it can do stuff. Right? Because in this case, I'm doing stuff without referencing any code, so I don't have to do a checkout. But if I wanted to use code, which is probably what you want to do, then you would have to then pull down the code. And every other dependency, for instance, like PowerShell modules and stuff like that, you would have to install unless it's something that's already on the machine. And I see you. And if we go back to this one, let's see if I can make... So you can go in here and see what's in these images. And there's a lot. let's just say it's a big hunk of thing. It's a lot of stuff going on here. So literally, like in most cases, you just use this and everything works out fine. If you have special needs, or like if you have some like governmental things that you need to deal with or stuff, you can self-host these runners. And they can run on a container or a VM, but just like I always go for containers, but the problem with the container is that you can't build containers unless you do a lot of weird stuff. So that makes it hard. If it's a VM, you can easily build things. Yes?
What if the project is not public? How does it use your credentials to check out the code, or do you have to specify credentials?
There's an own like pipeline credential for doing that. You can also, with every action or step or whatever you want to call it, you can define what the token you use. So by default, actually, I have an example that shows this. Great. I don't have to remember everything. So for instance, like building a container requires some permissions to on like the GitHub site, like if you can push out the container and stuff like that. And by default, it doesn't, I think. So what you can do is when you create a job, you can define permissions, and this is the permission for the GitHub standard token that your repository kind of deals with. Everything happens in the back end. So you can, by default, you can just use this and it will automatically be able to download the code at least and then run stuff on it. But if you need some special permissions, you might need to define that. Or in the case of, for instance, like here, I'm using my own token because we have a little guy called Crayon Bot, this dude. Because when he adds and like comments and stuff like that, if you don't do that, it says GitHub. Or if I use my personal access token, it says that I did it, which I don't want because I don't want people to think that I do everything and then come to me and ask for everything. So I created Crayon Bot. He says I'm a bot, beep up. So yeah. So yes, by default you have basically access to do whatever you probably need to do, and then you can define on top of that if you need something special then. Yes.
Could you do something like a read pipeline to PS Gallery? And if so, how would you test it without spamming PS Gallery with all your pipeline tests until it runs?
Well, you can publish it to PS Gallery, and when it comes to like testing that, so you mean like testing the module?
I mean testing the pipeline while you develop the pipeline.
Oh, well, good question. There are probably call like limits and stuff like that in place. I haven't had a reason to spam the PS Gallery. I kind of just made it work the first time. Because literally, like what you're doing is basically the same as you would do offline. Like these pipelines are literally just like the things that you did in your terminal. Let's just put it in here. So if it works on your machine, it probably works here as well. I have a module that get automatically pushed, or actually two modules that get automatically pushed, but that happens in Azure DevOps. But it's the same principle. It's literally just doing the publish command and everything like that. And when it comes to testing of the module before, so it doesn't like put it out and then test it. It tests it locally, like it pulls down the code and imports it manually, testing it, and if that works, publish it. But yeah, you might end up having some sort of like, it depends on how much you're like fat fingering it. Like if you do that like hundreds of times a second, it's probably going to be an issue. Well, hopefully that's not the case. All right. Yes.
How do you deal with secrets in the actions? You showed something just now. I think we looked at it.
So scripts are literally just running this script.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, the only thing that you need to think about is the fact that the machine that you're running things on need to have the script. Obviously, if you're running something that you can reach from the internet, you probably could just like do that.
Well, I'm measuring up towards Azure DevOps, how they do it, like how you do it with all credentials and put the keys. How does GitHub do that with actions? If you get the credentials, or
Right.
put in secrets, or
Yeah, so on a there's two levels. It's on a repository level and on an organization level. You have secrets. You can define secrets on an organization level and then say that certain repositories have access to that. That's how we do the Crayon bot token, because this is set on an organization level.
so you cannot do it like in Azure DevOps. You can do it on the pipeline, where the pipeline has all the key.
Yeah, so on a pipeline, I don't think I have any secrets here, but you have a secrets tab here, and then you can add them and reference them just like you would do in Azure DevOps. And again, that works the same way with everything in GitHub Actions. So if I look at that one. Yeah, no, and this is specifically for, like I said, referencing the GitHub token. That one's there by default. It doesn't have to be this. So if I added a different token to publish to somewhere else, because this is all on the GitHub side, so I can reuse this. But if I, for instance, did like Azure Container Registry or something like that, I would need to add a token. But this would be the same. And it would look exactly the same. So it's just secrets dot and whatever the name is. And by default, there's something called GitHub token, which I've set the permissions for here. Yeah. No more questions? Yep.
How can I create a merge request in Action?
You may create a pull request from in Actions. Like if you want to do something and then the action is then doing a pull request against a piece of code, or do you want to react on a pull request?
I think it's the first.
Right.
I use test and test my module, and if it's all okay, I would like to make a merge request with this method.
I'm fairly sure that there's something on the marketplace to do that. But in itself, like everything, when it comes to everything that you can do with Git, like from the command line, you could also do that through here. So if you did something and then you could have a step that just uses PowerShell and say, like git commit and push and everything like that. And then you could probably also just use the GitHub CLI, which I'm fairly sure is installed, because that would be weird. Yeah, GitHub CLI is there, which then you can do everything you can do on GitHub basically with. So, but again, like there's probably 6,000 ways of like doing that, because like I said, you can use whatever like CLI tool you would be able to do that with. You could do that through APIs. You could do that through. There's probably GitHub Actions that are literally just like, this is what I want to do, and then it does that pull request for you. I haven't had to do that, so I'm like, that's why I'm a little bit of like ambiguous on it. But like I said, if you can get GitHub CLI, you can do pull requests. Yeah. All right. It's only under 6 minutes left, so if no one has any questions, you can get an extra set of coffees in here before the next one. No questions? All right. Thanks so much.